Hi, Shawn. Thank you so much for joining me today. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start that over. I'm not used to doing these like recorded. I'm used to being like, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Developer House. So
Do
I'll
the
just
same
do it
thing.
how I normally
Just
do it.
pretend, yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm learning in public right now. So hi, everyone. Welcome to our developer health space. Today, we are talking about courage and vulnerability with Shawn, Swyx, Wang. And Shawn is going to be joining us to talk about the Learn in Public movement that he started, some of his community work. And I thought that he was the best person to talk to about courage and vulnerability because of the way that you have to put yourself out there and really be open to maybe messing up in front of other people, open to possibly being embarrassed, and like how that actually builds you up and strengthens you as a developer and a technologist. And I've been reading a few books and looking at a couple of studies about the benefits of courage and vulnerability in the workplace. And it's been found in this report by Accenture that high trust companies where employees are encouraged to be innovative and to think boldly, they experience a 74% decrease in stress, are 50% more productive, take 13% fewer sick days, and are 76% more engaged than those who work for a low trust organization where it's not encouraged for them to speak up or be courageous or bring anything to the table without the fear of a repercussion. So just to introduce Swyx really quickly, head of developer experience at Temporal, author of the Coding Career Handbook, co-founder of Svelte Society, which has 10,000 plus developers, a mod for React.js subreddit, 20,000 plus or 200,000 plus developers, the proponent of the Learn in Public movement, and now officially announced today, a speaker at React Miami conference. So thank you so much, Shawn, for joining us.
That last one is my highest honor. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited.
I'm so excited. I have never been to Miami, so this is going to be exciting.
Oh, well, it's very different from Seattle.
Yeah, I've heard.
So thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start with talking about Learn in Public. So for those who might not be familiar, what does that mean?
It means that you put the process of learning out in the open for others to participate in. And it's not specifically, notice how I word that. In other words, you're not learning to show off, or you're not learning to give back to the community because you're so generous and kind of a person. It's actually that you are holding yourself accountable and you're inviting others to join in your process if you want to, but otherwise you're still intrinsically motivated and not extrinsically motivated by likes and retweets and subscriber counts or whatever. When people do that sort of thing, they tend to lose a bit of their focus and their intellectual curiosity, because then they pander to whatever is most popular or gets the most clicks, or it's not necessarily the most intellectually honest thing to do. So I tend to basically arrive on this idea by reflecting my tech career versus my finance career, because before I changed careers to tech, I was in finance, and everything that we did in finance was private. And all the analyst reports and all the industry reports that I wrote and read and learned is now stuck in some mailbox somewhere. And I also realized that it's part of the culture of the industry that it's so close, but also I realized that it wasn't really benefiting me to keep things to myself, because if I shared it, then I would get feedback on it and it would grow much faster. So when I changed careers to tech, I did the complete opposite. I just decided to just do everything in reverse, and then my tech career exploded. So I think that was my fundamental learning, and I wrote it down one day. I was like, everything that has good that's come out of my tech career so far has just been me doing stuff in public, and I think more people should try it. And that went really viral and sort of kicked off my writing career, and that led to the book. So I think it's just a really good thing, not just for yourself. I kind of view it as the fastest way to learn, not just for the community, because they get another person sort of being vulnerable and showing their flaws, but also even for people who are ahead of you, they know more than you there because they're experts. As long as you show yourself to be a trustworthy member of the community, they'll engage with you because they want you to amplify their message, to become a foil for them to test their messaging. So for example, when React was launching their hooks rollout 3 years ago, they actually asked me about what I thought about the docs, even though I wasn't anywhere on their level, because I was kind of the everyman, like the dumb developer. And if I got it, then hopefully others would get it, or I would be able to help them get it because I learned in public. And so I think it's just useful for everyone around you, and I really like that as a function. And, I even talk about things in terms of like a big O notation, which is which developers kind of love categorically determining like what's the algorithm of your learning, right? A lot of people's algorithm of learning is kind of like a log of n being the number of years, in a sense that in the early years they'll kind of learn pretty quickly, and then they'll kind of level off. So I think learning in public kind of accelerates that by bringing more people into your circle, and then having you be more introspective about the things that you learn, and having a public record of it so you cannot forget it because you can just search it up. So I think there's just all these benefits.
Oh yeah, absolutely. To be able to see how far you've come is pretty incredible, because some days it feels like, am I getting any further? And to be able to go back and look and see like, wow, I've come all this way. That's awesome. So about how long ago did you start this Learn in Public movement? How long has this been running, and what kind of adoption have you seen? How many people do you think have joined this movement, if you were to ballpark the number?
Honestly, I have no idea how many, because it's not something I care about. So I don't keep track of it. It's not, again, my whole thing is about intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic. And I think that if I took it as a number to be gamed, then sure, I could probably game a huge number, but like, is that really helping anyone? Why not just have this message out there and have no expectation whatsoever that I'll hear from them? Sometimes I get messages every week saying like, reaching out and saying how someone took that message and it helped to change their life or anything like that. And that's something I'm really grateful for, but I don't need it. Because all I know is that it's helped me, and I can just be a very vocal member of this community, and I don't have to have any ownership beyond that. Something I will say as well is that it's not something that I came up with on my own. I heard about this idea from Kelsey Hightower, who kind of threw it as like an offhand thing, and I made it my whole thing, whereas he's obviously moved on. And the earliest instance I found of learning in public actually comes from NASA, like 9 years before I did it. So there's a long intellectual history. And so the way I like to say it is that I won't be the first, I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last, right? So someone else can come along and own this idea. And this idea exists independently of any one person. All I can say is I know my story, and I know how my life has changed because of it. And so I can be a beacon to others to try it out.
Absolutely. Well, I think there is definitely a moment where you are a person that comes to mind when people think about Learn in Public. I was out the other night with an engineer, and I think I was giving him some React Miami spoilers, and I'm like, Swyx is joining us, and he's like, Learn in Public, and I was like, yes. So I wanted to ask, in a regular dev job or a typical workplace, is there a way to bring in Learn in Public into that? Because you brought up the point earlier, like when you're in finance, everything is private. There's a lot of dev jobs too, where everything is locked down as well. But culturally in the company, how could you bring an idea like that into the fold?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you for bringing it up. And the other way to phrase it is as well is that not everyone really wants to do like public speaking to a huge crowd, or blog to millions of people. You can still keep it small, and in fact, it's still really effective when it's internal. And I'm sorry, you don't have a choice. Even though you like to write code, you also have to communicate with other humans. So this is just a good practice to have. So the easiest way I found is actually through most workplaces have something like a brown bag lunch, where before the pandemic, we would used to all grab lunch together and then get into a room, and somebody who's just super passionate about something can just do a talk to their friends and their coworkers, and I think it'd be totally okay. Something I really was inspired by was actually Artsy, which is a art auction house startup in New York. They actually filmed their brown bag lunches and put it up, and it was just a really welcoming part of the New York City tech scene. So I encourage doing that, because when you work with your coworkers, like a lot of times you're just talking about work stuff, but you all have interests outside of work. And I think if you take some opportunity to share something you're passionate about, and it could potentially be work related. A lot of times, actually, all these are kind of tangential to work, but it's the thing that you really want to do. So people, if they're sold on it, they'll probably find a way to work it into your day job. Anyway, so beyond the brown bag lunches, everyone has demo days or some kind of internal showcase thing. And a lot of developers will typically shy away from that because they're like, I don't know, I just worked on the code, like it works good enough for me, right? But I think if you take the extra opportunity to present your work and make it interesting to others who may not necessarily have to care, then you're really practicing a lot of the skills in life that you're going to need to make others care when you actually need to. So I always think about this as practice, like do the things when you don't need to so that you're ready when you do need those skills. So it's all those communication skills and writing skills that you know are eventually important, but you just don't feel like it's a priority right now. Take the small opportunities to practice that internally, like whether it's some internal demo showcase or run back lunch, or even just like documentation for onboarding. So I think all these are really good opportunities.
Yeah, I really like that point of practicing. I think I was watching The Mind Explained on Netflix, and they were doing an episode, I think, on courage, if I remember correctly. Okay, wait, no, that's not where I heard it, but it doesn't matter. The point is, what they were saying was that courage is not the absence of fear. It's just the way that you view fear. It's your relationship to it. Is it consuming you, or is it something that you are moving alongside with? So in order to be courageous or to be brave, that means that fear has to be there, because if it's not, then this is not courageous. And the way that you get braver and like have bigger acts of courage is by just doing courageous things. Like there's no way around it. So I like this idea that you brought up of, even if you don't want to do the demo day, like maybe you want to be a conference speaker one day. Like speaking in front of your coworkers is probably going to be less intimidating than a room full of hundreds of people that you don't know. So just kind of starting to chisel away at that in places that you feel a little bit safer. I wanted to ask you also about being a community leader. I think it's really cool that you are both a moderator of the React subreddit and the co-founder of Svelte Society.
I should clarify that. So I have
Okay.
stepped away from the Reddit side of things.
Oh, okay.
So I did, I double hatted for a year, and then I thought that I probably should resign my post on the Reddit side, because I don't think it makes sense to be a community leader in two frameworks.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, and I it's okay still. The question that I'm asking, it doesn't have to be like in parallel, but just I think the fact that you are a community leader in two frameworks and that you've had that experience alone, because you know how it is, like some people, they get very like, oh, React is the way, or like Vue is the one. But you're not only like learning both, but you're like diving in head first, and you're like, let's get together, let's do this. So what's that like for you? Like, why, like, what's that about? Like, you're very open-minded, trying different things and like getting involved with the community. Could you talk about that?
Oh, sure. I think that specific question or that specific move is born out of my belief that developers should probably not define themselves by the technology of the day. It seems like a very fragile thing to do. A lot of people pride themselves and call themselves React developers, and that's fine. But React won't be around forever, as impolite as it may be to say. But that's just a fact of life. Like there's so much churn in software that someday it will be the old uncool technology, and there'll be a new hotness. And I think I am pro developer experience. I'm pro user experience. I'm pro communities that are independent, open source, and not supported by a mega corporation that might or might not be destroying democracy. So there are many reasons to try other things, and I think I had the freedom to do that. So I definitely think that I did that move as well out of privilege, right? In the sense that I had spoken at something like 30 React conferences. I've done blog posts that have been read by millions of developers. I could probably get any React job that I really needed. So it was actually very low risk for me to try something else. And get that experience and call out the things that React was not doing well enough, because who else was going to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, there's not one tool that's going to do everything, and you're totally right. Everything is going to have its end date. Everything's going to see its deprecation day.
This is so sad. Okay, I'll tell you one thing though. So it's something I have become quite focused on. I think React did a lot of things right. And even though the code may sort of go out of date, or there's this idea of bit rots, right? Like there's a half-life of everything that you put out. But I think the principles are timeless. Mm-hmm. So I started giving a talk about how these are the 7 principles that will outlive React. That like these are really good ideas, and whatever may come in the future, they'll probably have to learn from these same ideas because they just worked really well. So I often think about principles.
So in terms of like community, you also have your own community around your book, right?
Yes, I'm kind of a community addict. So I started Svelte Society, and then because I wrote my book, I always hate when you read a book and then you've got nobody to talk about it with. So I was like, all right, I'll like, spin up a Discord. And then I have a third community, which is a finance community, which is dev sucking money. So I started that one separately as well. So yeah, I do a lot of community stuff.
Yeah. I feel like people who really love community, they really go all in on it. But at the same time, it's so hard. There's a lot of really hard things about putting together a community, running a community, making sure that it stays focused. So what is it about community that you really are attracted to?
Wow, I mean, talking to great people, just smart, motivated, independently thinking people that I can learn a lot from, and hopefully I can give some value to, and hopefully they can pay me back in some way. It's kind of like a weird thing. I will say there is some personal motivation in the sense that I am trying to get good at community because I think it's a valuable skill in life. So I do these recreationally, but I also think that there will be some personal benefit in the future, right? So I don't do this just out of the goodness of my heart. I'm doing this for practice. But I definitely think like I just think it's a good experience. Like I love hanging out in communities. Well before I was in tech, I was hanging out online in like all these forums, which are just so super niche, but it had all of my people, and for someone who's like not in like I didn't grow up in the US, like for someone who's just like not super well connected, those are where you got your people and your moral support. And I think that's just so important when indulging or learning anything. Actually, when I so this is a story that a lot of people don't really know, but when I learned to code, it was a very lonely experience. I didn't have many other friends who were like trying to learn to code, and I found a community on Slack called Coding Blocks that actually helped me through. So I was trying to learn JavaScript, and they were C#.NET community, so completely like not even like the right focus, but they were just the most friendly bunch of people and encouraging bunch of people that they helped me get through my day when I was having a bad time, and that was all you needed really. So I think communities can change lives, and hopefully I'm helping to do that for others.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, one of the major draws to a community. Purpose of community is giving people a sense of belonging, making them feel welcome, and having a place where they can get help if they need it. So I think that's great. And I want to ask one more question, and that's if you could give listeners tips on where to get started, like learning in public, where are some basically easy entry points into starting to work in that way?
Oh yeah. So a lot of people, when they hear the learning public message, they get very inspired, and then they'll tag me and say, "Look, I'm setting up my blog post. I'm doing the thing," and I'm like, "Great," but then I see them like a year later, and they've got like 3 posts on their blog, and the first is the hello world, the second is how I built the blog, and the third is sorry I haven't posted in a while, and that's so stereotypical. It's so like I'm sure like it's such a big specter in people's minds that they don't even start. So I would like to propose a different way to doing this, which is that you engage in conversation, meaning that you don't try to come up with a fully formed, world-breaking blog post on day 1 or day 2 or day 100. You try to take notes on some talk or somebody else's blog post that you really resonated with, and you make it entirely super focused on something that they do. It increases the chances that they're likely to read it and respond to it because you're talking about their work. And also it increases the probability that you can find the next thing to write about, and the next thing, and the next thing. And pretty soon you're going to have an opinion of your own that you can just start writing about, talking about, speaking about, and you're doing it, but it becomes a way of life, an habitual side effect of you coming across new interesting things, than something that you set out to do as its own endeavor, right? Like, so I always call this a creative exhaust. Like you're doing something else and you put it out in public as a side effect, not as a goal to pursue for 100 days or 1,000 days. No, it's just a way of life for you. I don't even count how long I've been doing it just because I do it. I am the thing. So I would really like for people to do those 2 things, which is 1, pick up what others put down, which is kind of the phrase that I've stuck to for this, just because like people understand it in the American context. And 2, which is treat it as an infinite game, which is like it is a habit and not a project that you embark on and then abandon based on success or fail criteria. There is no success, there is no fail. It just is a thing that you do now because you fundamentally believe that you are benefiting out of it by having feedback loops, by having mentors, by giving back to the community as well, which happens. So all those things are just really good. I think just start with the right mentality and you'll have much better chance of sticking to it.
Absolutely. I think that those are really great tips. And I think starting out small is definitely the key to success in picking up any habit or any change in your lifestyle. So before we close, I always like to offer the opportunity if there was anything that I missed or anything that you wanted to add to the conversation that I didn't bring up. Feel free.
I think I would say, I think a lot of times when people talk about vulnerability, learning, tech, careers, it's very serious, it's very dry. Don't forget to have fun, don't forget to make fun of yourself, make fun of the industry, make fun of like whatever. Use your creative talents, like people make songs and they make art, because that reaches a whole set of people that like, don't really, I mean, it just unlocks a different part of your brain. I think it's very much left brain when you think about all these things. And when you switch over to the right brain and engage more of your emotions and allow yourself to enjoy the journey, I think you'll be, well, first of all, you'll be happier, but second of all, I think, a huge problem that people don't really talk about is burnout, right? And the way that you don't burn out is you indulge your whole self every once in a while and bring out the fun side of things. I also mention one more thing for women, because I think a lot of people, particularly the more vulnerable population, will say, oh yeah, it works for guys in tech or whatever. And I know there are a lot of women out there who are successful role models in learning public. I think there's a sliding scale in terms of how safe you feel in public, and for sure, people who have stalkers and harassers, they definitely can be more on the more conservative side. And you can look for examples of all of those. I think Lynn Clark, Jessica Chan, Sarah Drasner, these are all role models that I look up to for deciding what to do with the public sphere. It's not something that should take over your entire life, but you can use it to leverage it to move your own career forward. Like don't lock yourself out of it just because you have a generic fear of like being out there.
Yeah, I think that those are really two great points that you brought up. The way that your previous career was in finance, mine was in the art industry. So I fully co-sign the creative, get creative message, and have fun. And then I really appreciate, yeah, for vulnerable communities, marginalized communities in tech, it's not necessarily always as easy. And if I could add one more thing to that, there are a lot of different groups for women only. And those are also good places, I think, to start sharing things where it feels maybe like a little less scary. So in any case, thank you so much, Swyx, for joining our developer health space today and for talking to us about courage and vulnerability. I really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you in Miami.
Oh, it'll be so fun. Thanks so much for having me. This is a blast.